The escape that shocked everyone. It was a dark, cold night on Rikers Island. The rain fell like knives, slicing through the metal bars of the cells. In the quiet chaos of the prison, one man made a move that nobody could forget. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was trying to vanish into thin air, outsmarting the guards, cameras, and the wall that had trapped thousands before him. His plan was meticulous, daring, and terrifying. But Rikers Island had a reputation for devouring escape attempts alive. And tonight, the prison would show its true teeth. A single alarm shattered the silence. Footsteps echoed in the empty corridors. Guards shouted orders. And in the heart of the prison, the man's plan collided with an unexpected horror that nobody saw coming. The camera pans over the maze-like walls, the towers, the barbed fences. You can almost feel the tension, the fear, the desperation. And just as the first scream rang out, everything froze. What happened next? Did he survive? Or did Rikers Island claim yet another victim in its dark history? The prison that eats men alive. Marcus stepped off the ferry onto Rikers Island, and the metal gates clanged shut behind him with a sound that felt like the final death knell of freedom. The cold wind bit at his skin, and the rain-slicked streets glistened under the dim lights of the prison towers. From the first moment, Marcus could feel it. The prison had a presence, almost alive, waiting to consume anyone who dared challenge it. As he was led through the corridors, the smell hit him first, a heavy mixture of sweat, disinfectant, and despair. Guards walked past with keys jangling, eyes sharp as knives, scanning every inmate like predators measuring prey. Marcus noticed the other prisoners quickly, some staring blankly, some muttering to themselves, and a few watching him with quiet suspicion. Each glance seemed like a test. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus learned quickly that survival here wasn't about strength. It was about strategy. He memorized guard rotations, noted every blind spot, and listened to the whispers in the hallways. One man might seem friendly, but a single misstep could turn an ally into an enemy. Tension clung to every corner of the prison, thick and suffocating, as if the walls themselves were alive, listening, judging. Marcus began to study the routines, when guards took breaks, when lights flickered, even when the cameras briefly missed a corner. Every small detail became a part of a larger plan forming in his mind. But each night, lying on the narrow cot in his cell, he felt the weight of despair pressing down. He imagined freedom. But Rikers Island was relentless, always reminding him that hope was a dangerous thing here. One rainy evening, while the prisoners were locked in their cells, Marcus noticed something, a slight misalignment in the yard gate, barely noticeable, and a camera angle that didn't cover a small section of the corridor. To anyone else, it was meaningless. But to Marcus, desperate for freedom, it was a lifeline. He traced the patterns over and over in his mind, imagining each possible escape route. His heart raced, not with fear, but with the electric thrill of a plan slowly coming together. Weeks passed. He made small moves, testing the waters. A carefully timed trip to the laundry room, a hidden tool slid under a bench, observing the guards' reactions, pretending to be just another prisoner. His mind was a constant battlefield, each thought weighed, each move calculated. He had to remain invisible, unnoticed, because one mistake could destroy him. Then came the night he had been waiting for. The storm outside matched the turmoil in his mind. Rain hammered the roof, lightning flashing across the sky, illuminating the maze-like corridors for fleeting moments. Marcus waited until the guard's attention was diverted, then slipped out of his cell with the precision of a ghost. The first hurdle was a lightly guarded corridor. He moved slowly, listening to the echo of his own heartbeat, feeling every vibration of the floor beneath his feet. He rounded corners, crouched in shadows, and held his breath when the distant shuffle of boots came near. Each step felt like a lifetime, each second stretched into an eternity. He reached the outer yard. The gate he had been watching was slightly ajar, just as he had predicted. Freedom was within reach. He ran, ignoring the pounding rain, the mud sucking at his shoes, the fear gnawing at his stomach. But then, an alarm shattered the night. Red lights flashed, and a piercing siren cut through the storm. Guards shouted, and flashlights swung toward him, cutting through the darkness like knives. Marcus froze. Every plan, every calculation, had led to this moment, and the prison was ready. Every wall, every tower, Every camera seemed alive, closing in on him from all sides. He darted toward a small side corridor, hoping for an escape route he had memoized, but a steel door slammed shut behind him. His path was blocked. Panic clawed at his chest as he pounded on the door, but it didn't budge. Guards' voices grew louder, footsteps echoing, prisoners screaming in the chaos. Marcus realized a terrible truth. Rikers Island had claimed him. Once again, the prison had eaten another escape attempt alive. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside him, wild, merciless, and unstoppable. Trapped in the lion's den, Marcus's hand scraped against the cold steel as he pounded on the locked door. His chest heaved, his lungs burning with each ragged breath. Outside, the alarm blared, a piercing wail that seemed to shake the walls themselves. He could hear the guard shouting, boots pounding the concrete floors, keys rattling, and the occasional terrified scream of another inmate caught in the chaos. He pressed himself against the door, listening to every sound. The metallic echo of footsteps approached from the corridor. Each step felt heavier than the last, closer, unavoidable. He tried to calm himself, telling his racing mind to think, to plan, to survive. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest, threatening to give him away. Then a shadow appeared at the edge of the light spilling from the corridor. Marcus froze. The hand that gripped his shoulder was strong, unyielding, and cold. A voice hissed just above a whisper. "Move. Now." Marcus didn't know if it was a guard or another prisoner. He had seconds to act, and the darkness swallowed his thoughts like a predator. Slowly, carefully, he allowed himself to be led down the corridor. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to resist, but resisting would mean death. The corridor opened into a dimly lit maintenance room, damp and filled with the smell of rust and mold. Flickering bulbs cast long shadows that twisted across the walls. Marcus realized he was not alone. 3 men stood there, prisoners he had seen before, dangerous, notorious, and unpredictable. Their eyes glinted with malice. "You thought you could outsmart Rikers," one of them sneered. "This place eats fools like you for breakfast." Marcus's mind raced. He knew he had to stay calm, to act like he belonged, to find a way out. The room felt like a cage, the air thick with fear and the weight of impending violence. Every second stretched, every movement had consequences. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, he couldn't tell. He was forced to answer questions, to navigate a tense conversation, to maintain his composure as the 3 men circled him like wolves. Outside, he could hear the faint echoes of guards, the shuffling of other prisoners, the distant sound of the storm raging against the prison walls. The maze of corridors, towers, and cells seemed alive, every shadow hiding a threat. Marcus remembered the small vent he had seen near the back wall, a tiny shaft that might lead him to another corridor. He inched toward it, careful to avoid detection. Sweat dripped into his eyes as he forced himself to stay silent, every step deliberate, every breath measured. Then disaster struck. The building shook violently. A deafening explosion ripped through the nearby section of the prison. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered and went out entirely, plunging Marcus into pitch-black darkness. Screams erupted around him. Chaos exploded through the corridors as prisoners and guards alike reacted to the blast. Marcus's heart pounded so violently he feared it might give him away. He stumbled forward, narrowly avoiding a falling beam, feeling his way along the wall. He reached the vent. With a deep breath, he squeezed his body into the tight shaft, scraping his hands raw on the metal edges. The confined space made every sound magnified, his own ragged breathing, the echo of footsteps, the faint groan of the prison reacting to the explosion. The vent led him to a hidden maintenance corridor, dark and twisting. Marcus's mind raced as he remembered every possible path from the prison schematics he had memoized in his mind. Every corner held the threat of discovery, every shadow a potential attacker. And then he heard it, a low growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching the vent's exit. Marcus's pulse raced. He froze, pressing himself against the cold metal, holding his breath. When the footsteps stopped, he dared a glance. In the darkness, he saw the glint of a knife. One of the prisoners from the room had followed him, tracking his every move. There was no one else a miles. The exit, his only hope of survival, was blocked. Marcus had come so close to freedom. Every calculation, every careful step, every risk had brought him here. But now, Trapped in the vent with a predator waiting on the other side, he realized the harsh truth. Rikers Island wasn't just a prison. It was a trap, a predator, and tonight it was ready to strike. The prisoner lunged. Darkness in the heart of Rikers. Marcus felt the weight of the attacker's body crash into him. Pain shot through his ribs as they tumbled across the damp corridor floor. The metal walls reverberated with the impact, amplifying every grunt, every scrape, every curse. His mind raced, heart hammering in his chest. Survival wasn't just instinct. It was a game of wits, and the stakes were life or death. Stay still, or you'll regret it. The prisoner snarled, pressing a knife dangerously close to Marcus's side. The cold steel bit into his ribs, sending a shiver down his spine. Marcus swallowed hard, trying to calm the adrenaline that threatened to make him freeze. He needed a plan. Fast. He remembered the small metal pipe near the wall, used for maintenance, thick and solid. If he could grab it without alerting his attacker, he had a chance. Inch by inch, he shifted, using his leg to nudge the pipe closer. Every millimeter felt like hours. The footsteps of guards echoed faintly down the corridor, but they were too far to notice him. The prisoner, distracted for a moment, muttered something under his breath. A warning, a threat? Marcus lunged, grabbing the pipe and swinging it with all his strength. The attacker stumbled backward, cursing loudly. For a moment, Marcus tasted hope. He darted toward the vent exit, adrenaline fueling his movements. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead, lined with pipes and shadows. Each step was a gamble, each breath a risk of giving away his position. Then he saw it, a glimmer of light in the distance. Freedom or a trap? He couldn't tell, but it was the only direction to go. He sprinted, dodging falling debris from the early explosion, weaving through puddles of water that made the floor slippery. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but he pushed forward. The corridor split into multiple paths. Marcus paused, chest heaving, trying to recall the layout he had memorized. He had been here before, in theory, but theory and reality rarely matched in Rikers Island. He chose the right path, hoping instinct would carry him. Suddenly, a voice barked from above. There? Stop him. A guard's flashlight cut through the darkness, blinding Marcus temporarily. Panic surged. He dove into a side passage, scraping his hands and knees on the rough concrete, barely making it out of the light. As he crawled forward, the wall seemed to close in on him. The air was thick with dust, the faint smell of mold and rust filling his lungs. Every sound, dripping water, distant shouts, the echo of his own heartbeat, was amplified in the oppressive silence. Marcus reached a narrow ladder leading up to another vent shaft. He climbed, fingers gripping the cold metal rungs, knees trembling. At the top, he paused to listen. Silence. He dared to hope for the first time in hours. But that hope was short-lived. From below, the sound of shouts and footsteps grew closer. Guards had discovered his trail. And Weiss, another prisoner, had followed, appearing silently in the shadows. Marcus's heart raced. He had to move. He crawled through the vent, careful not to make a sound. The shaft twisted and turned, opening into a maintenance room filled with pipes and electrical boxes. For a moment, he allowed himself a brief pause. Then a loud metallic clang rang out. The prisoner behind him had thrown a heavy wrench into the room. Sparks flew as it hit an electrical box, sending a shower of sparks into the air. Marcus yelped, ducking instinctively. The room filled with smoke, the smell of burning metal and ozone stinging his nose. Through the haze, Marcus saw it, a large sliding door at the far end of the room. It was his only chance. But as he ran, the floor beneath him shifted. He hadn't noticed the trapdoor slightly ajar. His foot caught, sending him sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through his shoulder as he hit the concrete. Dazed, he looked up just in time to see the prisoner lunging at him again, knife raised, eyes wide with fury. Marcus reached for anything that could save him. And then the lights flickered back on, revealing the entire maintenance room, and another guard standing directly in front of him, gun drawn. The world froze. Marcus was caught between two deadly threats, the furious prisoner lunging at him and a guard ready to fire. A single shot rang out. Chaos and blood in Rikers. The deafening gunshot echoed through the maintenance room. Marcus's ears rang, and for a split second, everything went silent. Then chaos exploded around him. Sparks still flew from the electrical box. Smoke curled in thick tendrils, and the prisoner lunging at him froze, a hand clutching his chest. Marcus's heart pounded violently. He could barely process what had happened. Was the prisoner hit? Was he safe? He didn't have time to think. The guard's flashlight cut through the smoke, illuminating the room like a spotlight on a stage of horror. "Down! Now!" the guard shouted, raising his weapon. Marcus obeyed instinctively, dropping to the floor and pressing himself against the cold concrete. Around him, debris from the earlier explosion rattled, dust falling like rain. He stole a glance at the wounded prisoner. Blood was slowly spreading across his shirt, and his breathing was ragged. Marcus realized the prisoner was still a threat, even injured. Every second mattered. The guard's eyes were sharp, scanning, alert. But Marcus knew he couldn't rely on the guard to save him. He needed a way out. Slowly, carefully, he inched toward the far side of the room where the sliding door waited. Every scrape of his fingers against concrete felt deafening. His lungs burned, his mind raced, and the storm outside mirrored the chaos inside him. Rain hammered the roof, water dripping from the broken ceiling. A shout from the corridor made him freeze. Other guards were converging on the room, alerted by the gunshot and the explosion. Marcus realized he had mere seconds before he would be completely surrounded. He spotted a maintenance hatch high on the wall, a small vent leading upward. It was risky, but it was his only chance. Marcus climbed, hands raw from gripping the metal, boots scraping concrete. He could hear the prisoner stirring below, a low growl of frustration. Marcus's pulse raced. One wrong move, one slip, and this might be the end. He squeezed through the vent, crawling inch by inch. Every turn felt like a lifetime. The vent twisted unexpectedly, forcing him to backtrack briefly. His body ached from the fall earlier, from the climbing, from the fear. But he pushed on. Below, he could hear the guards coordinating, shouting orders, keys clanging against metal. The echoes bounced off the walls, creating a disorienting labyrinth of sound. Marcus paused for a breath, pressed against the vent ceiling, listening carefully. The prisoner was down below, cursing, bleeding but still moving. Finally, the vent opened into another hidden corridor. Marcus's legs trembled as he dropped silently to the floor. Pipes overhead dripped water, forming small puddles. The corridor stretched ahead, dark and narrow. This part of the prison was almost forgotten, a place only used for maintenance. But even here, danger lurked. Marcus's mind raced. He remembered a map of the prison he had glimpsed during intake. The corridor led to the perimeter near the older section of the island. If he could just make it to the back fence, maybe, just maybe, he could escape. The sound of footsteps again. Guards! And then, the prisoner, staggering but still following. Marcus sprinted forward, leaping over puddles, twisting around corners, barely staying ahead. His lungs burned, heart hammering, muscles screaming, but fear kept him moving faster than he had ever moved before. And then he saw it, the back gate, freedom. He could almost feel it. But before he could reach it, a guard stepped out of the shadows, raising a baton. "Stop right there," the guard shouted. Marcus skidded to a halt, only to realize the prisoner had recovered and was charging again, knife raised. Marcus had nowhere to run. Trapped between two deadly threats, the rain soaking him to the bone, the storm outside reflecting the chaos inside, he made a split-second decision. He darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the baton and the knife. But in doing so, he stumbled directly into a loose section of the fence. The fence gave way under his weight, swinging open, but alarms screamed as motion sensors triggered. Red lights barred the yard. Guards shouted, sirens blared, dogs barked. Marcus froze, caught in the open. From all sides, the prison came alive. Towers, fences, alarms, guards, and prisoners. The entire island seemed to close in on him. Marcus realized with a sickening clarity he wasn't just escaping a prison. He was fighting a living nightmare. And then, above the din, he heard it, the howl of dogs, closing in fast, teeth bared, the sound of claws scraping concrete. Marcus bolted. The edge of freedom. Marcus's lungs burned, his legs a blur as he sprinted across the wet yard. The storm hammered down on him, rain soaking his clothes, blinding his eyes, and turning the concrete into a slippery trap. Behind him, the dogs howled and barked, closing in fast. Their teeth glinted in the red alarm lights, eyes locked on their prey, Marcus. He skidded around a corner, narrowly avoiding the snap of a dog's jaws. His mind raced. Every route he had memorized, every possible escape path, suddenly seemed like a distant memory. The fence, the one he had almost reached, was still just ahead, but he wasn't sure he could make it. The guards shouted, their voices mixing with the barking, the storm, and the sirens. Marcus's heart pounded so violently he could feel it in his throat. Fear wasn't just an emotion, it was a weapon here, pushing him faster, sharper, more desperate. He dove behind a stack of crates near an abandoned building, panting, trying to catch his breath. The dogs snarled, circling, their handlers shouting commands. Marcus peeked out, gauging the distance. He had only one shot. One precise move could mean life, and one misstep could be death. The storm made everything slippery. Mud clung to his boots as he edged toward a low wall. If he could just scale it, he might reach a small drainage canal that ran along the perimeter, an unguarded path he had noticed during the storm earlier. He pushed off with all his strength, hands gripping the wet concrete. For a moment, it seemed he wouldn't make it, and then he swung his leg over. Free, he hit the ground running, the rain blinding him, the wind screaming in his ears. Behind him, the dogs leapt at the fence but couldn't follow. Marcus's body screamed in protest, burning lungs, aching legs, and scraped hands, but adrenaline carried him forward. He reached the canal. Water slushed up to his knees, icy and unforgiving. He didn't care. He plunged in, letting it carry him along the narrow path. The guard's shouts grew fainter, the dogs barking fading behind the walls. For a brief moment, Marcus allowed himself a heartbeat of hope. But Rikers Island wasn't done with him yet. As he moved through the canal, the storm seemed to intensify. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the maze of walls, towers, and fences that had almost claimed him. He could see shadows moving on the edges, guards, prisoners, or something worse. Every second was a gamble. Then he heard it, a deep, guttural growl coming from the canal itself. Marcus froze. Water churned in the darkness, and for a split second he thought he imagined it. But the sound grew louder, closer, and a shadow emerged from the black water. A figure, another prisoner, known for his brutality, had been waiting in the canal, hidden by the storm. His eyes glinted, knife in hand, ready for Marcus. There was nowhere to run. Marcus's mind worked frantically. Every escape route was blocked. Every option seemed impossible. He realized that freedom might slip through his fingers at the very last second. With a surge of desperation, Marcus ducked, spun, and struck the man with a piece of debris. The figure went down, but the canal was narrow, the water deep, and the storm unrelenting. Marcus struggled to keep balance, to stay on his feet, to keep moving. Above him, lightning flashed again, illuminating the walls of the prison like jagged teeth. Marcus felt the weight of the entire island pressing down on him. He was exhausted, battered, soaked, and terrified, but he was still alive. And then another alarm blared. A massive spotlight swung over the canal, illuminating him fully. Marcus froze. Guards were swarming the area. Dogs barked in the distance. The shadowy figure in the water stirred again. Marcus had run the gauntlet, but Rikers Island still had one last move. From the shadows, something large and menacing moved toward him, faster than anything he had seen before, teeth bared, eyes glowing in the storm. Marcus braced himself, knowing this might be the moment the prison finally claimed him. The final gauntlet. Marcus's body trembled as a massive shadow lunged toward him from the canal. His soaked clothes clung to him, every muscle screaming in protest. Fear and adrenaline surged through his veins like wildfire. He had run through alarms, guards, dogs, explosions, and vicious prisoners. But this was different. This felt like the heart of Rikers Island itself had risen against him. Instinct took over. Marcus dove to the side, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow from the figure's massive frame. Water splashed around him, icy and unforgiving. He scrambled, heart pounding, desperate for anything to defend himself. His eyes fell on a broken pipe lying in the canal. He seized it, swinging wildly. The figure stumbled back, giving him the tiniest opening. but it was all he had. Above him, lightning cracked, illuminating the prison walls like jagged teeth surrounding him. The storm and the chaos of Rikers seemed to merge into one living entity, testing his every move. Marcus realized something terrifying. Escape wasn't just about running. Survival meant outsmarting the prison itself. He dove into a narrow side passage leading from the canal. The water rushed around him, pulling at his legs. He gritted his teeth, pushing forward, adrenaline guiding him where his body could not. Behind him, the growls and shouts faded, replaced by the occasional bark of a distant dog, the echo of alarms, and the storm's fury. At last, he saw it, the outer edge of the island. A rickety dock stretched toward the river. Marcus didn't hesitate. He sprinted, slippery concrete and water threatening to make him stumble. Each step brought him closer to freedom, yet closer to danger as a prison seemed to reach for him with every shadow, every beam of light, every sound. Then another figure appeared. This time, it was a guard, weapon drawn, blocking his path. Marcus froze for a heartbeat, then lunged. They collided, struggled, and Marcus managed to shove the man aside, heart hammering, knowing that any hesitation could cost him everything. Finally, with a desperate leap, Marcus cleared the dock, plunging into the river. The icy waters swallowed him, but for the first time in hours, he felt the taste of freedom. The current carried him downstream, away from the island, away from the chaos, away from the prison that had devoured so many escape attempts before him. Exhausted, battered, and barely conscious, Marcus floated, gasping for air. Behind him, the island loomed like a dark fortress, its towers and walls silhouetted against the storm. He had survived, but the scars, both physical and mental, would last a lifetime. Rikers Island had tested him to the edge of human endurance and beyond. As the storm began to subside, Marcus drifted toward the distant lights of the city. Each passing moment, each ripple of water, reminded him of the relentless nightmare he had endured. The prison had almost claimed him, but somehow, against all odds, he had survived. The prison that never forgets. Rikers Island doesn't just confine bodies. It devours hope, crushes spirit, and tests the very limits of survival. Marcus's story is just one of thousands, a single thread in the tangled, dark history of a prison that has earned its fearsome reputation. Every escape attempt leaves its mark on the prisoners, the guards, and the prison itself. Some survive. Most do not. Marcus made it out. But the lesson is clear. Rikers Island isn't just walls and gates. It's a living, breathing nightmare, a maze designed to crush any soul daring enough to defy it. So the next time you hear stories of escape attempts, remember the truth behind the headlines. Behind the bars, behind the alarms, behind the storm and chaos, Rikers Island waits, always watching, always hungry, always ready to devour the next fool who thinks they can beat it. Because in this prison, every attempt at freedom is a battle with a living monster, and the monster rarely loses.